What's up, my comic comrades? Today we give you another Astonishing Times character spotlight episode, where we give you an insider's overview of key characters that appear in the new Comixology Originals comic book series. It's written by myself, Frank Barbiere, and Artist Ruairi Coleman. It may be my favorite new type of episode. Yes, I co-created these characters, but that has nothing to do with it. Like, that doesn't factor into the equation at all. All joking aside, if you watched our first Astonishing Times spotlight episode on Noah and Koken, you know the format of these episodes already. If you haven't watched it though, what the heck is wrong with you? I'm offended. Kidding. But for real, if you haven't watched it, you could find that episode right here or in the description. Now, some of you are like, what the heck is Astonishing Times? Well, it's a 5-issue series that introduces a brand new superhero universe through a murder mystery story told from the perspective of journalist named Noah Sands. But for a lot more detail on the book, check out the announcement and Creators Roundtable episodes for Astonishing Times that Variant recently posted here on the channel. Or better yet, you could also pick up Astonishing Times issue 1 right now exclusively on Comixology and Kindle. I highly recommend that option, but again, I'm just a bit biased. Link to grab a copy for yourself is in the description. With that said, today's episode is going to introduce you to Gold Rush, the speedster of Astonishing Times, and the great and powerful Infinite, the powerhouse of the Astonishing Times universe. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as Frank, Ruairi, and myself tell you what went into making these two characters, starting with Gold Rush.
One of the first characters you'll meet in Astonishing Times is the superhero Gold Rush, and Gold Rush is our speedster character. Coming into Astonishing Times, clearly we want to play with a bunch of different archetypes, and one of the things we first did was like, hey, if we have this iconic superhero team, let's build out the roles of the team and have some fun coming up with superheroes. So when we got to our speedster, clearly we wanted to have someone who was instantly recognizable, someone who you understood even in their design, like, oh, that's probably the guy that runs fast. And Gold Rush was that character for us.
Gold Rush is kind of the guy, as far as personality goes, who just follows orders, right? He's the guy, you tell him to do something, he's gonna get it done. Which is why he works so well with Infinite. I think they get along so well because Infinite obviously is like the guy giving out the orders and making sure everything's going right. And Gold Rush is the dude that's gonna follow that through. We have a lot of heroes that are gonna do whatever to win, but he's the guy, if you tell him to do something, he's gonna do it and ask questions later. But at the same time, we might explore if that's good or bad.
Gold Rush was one of the key characters who responded to the Cataclysm and kind of helped save the day in that big catastrophe moment. We definitely get a chance to flash back with him and show him using his powers, show him saving people in the Cataclysm. But as Astonishing Times begins, we are in a timeline pushed up 20 years removed from the Cataclysm. And Gold Rush is a hero who, while he had a lot of celebrity, he wasn't publicly known. People didn't know his secret identity. And we get a glimpse at kind of where he lived, like what kind of mementos he kept, and who he kind of aged into. And while we don't show so much of the wear on him as we do with a character like Koken, he is someone who is lovingly past his prime, I'll say. He's not someone who's kind of withered away, but he is someone who's kind of reflected and lived with his past as a superhero and is very proud of what he's done.
It was incredibly difficult to create a speedster or a fast-moving hero, a brand new one at least in the world of comics, just because there's so many, right? Like off the bat, everyone's like Quicksilver, the Flash, it's too most popular, but there's a lot more. So it's like, what do you do that's different? His power differs from other quick-moving characters in comics in the way that he could steal kinetic energy. So anything that's in motion, he could steal that speed and he could store it up. And he can hold on to that, build it up, and then let it go in one burst, or use it sporadically. He could even toss it into other things to make other things move quick.
My favorite thing about Gold Rush is his design. He was one of the first characters that we really jumped into, as he appears pretty early in the book, so by necessity we needed to see him and finish out his design before the book could get drawn. I've never come up with like a speedster type character before. Like I've read a ton of comics and I've obviously seen this archetype over and over, so when it came time to do this, I really didn't kind of know what we were going to get. I feel like in the back of my head, I just kept seeing the Flash and was like, oh God, we can't just make the Flash. But I really think the design we landed on is like a huge slam dunk. I think he's really cool looking, has a lot of really interesting little practical bits to his costuming and his ability set that, again, through co-writing and discussing with Ruairi and Arris, became so much more than me being like, I think we need a guy who runs fast. And I'm really proud of where he ended up, how cool he looks, how instantly recognizable he is too. I think with all our characters, Ruairi was able to really achieve a sense of them them being iconic, which is one of the most important thing, I think, to making a superhero, because even if you put someone in a costume, there's so much more nuance to making them look iconic and storied. And I think Gold Rush is another example where you kind of look at him and feel like, hey, that's a superhero. Like, what has he done before? Like, what's his history? And again, it excites me to tell more stories about him.
I always feel like the Speedster is the most underestimated part of the team. The joke being like, so you can run fast, big deal. And I like the idea that Gold Rush is not only like a formidable speedster in terms of like how his particular power set makes him different from just being fast. One thing that I've said before is the idea of like stealing kinetic energy, not only to like make yourself go fast, but to stop other people. That's not a common thing to do. So if he doesn't want you to hit him, you won't hit him, not because he can dodge you, but like he can just stop you from throwing a fist at him. Like, these things make him so interesting to me, but more so than that is the idea that like not only is this guy so different from speedsters in that way, but also this like undervalued archetype is also like the second in command to a guy like Infinite. Like, these guys are tight, they confide in one another, they look to one another when making decisions and things. Like, he's the second in command to the greatest superhero on the world. So in the world of Astonishing Times, where the greatest superhero in the world is gone, Gold Rush is the number one guy, and you don't see that too often with the speedster. So for me, it's interesting enough to have a speedster in that role, but like to create a character that actually earns that position was an exciting thing to take on.
He has these discs on his chest and on his forearms and his calves and stuff that basically help release his energy burst. So you could see when he's running in motion in the teaser trailer, you see like the energy coming off because they basically help discharge and give him a boost, which is really cool. And that was all Ruairi's idea. I mean, we're like, hey, character that run fast, this is a little bit of his origin, go. And he gave us this awesome design and we love it.
Gold Rush's design was one of these things when you have an archetype, especially a well-known archetype like the Speedster. I found a lot of like ideas coming to my head immediately that were just kind of derivatives of speedsters from like Marvel and DC, the skin tight suit, one predominant kind of color, maybe two, and I wanted to stay away from that kind of thing. Again, similar to Infinite, to try to like accentuate his physique, try to make him broader than the usual speedster, where the emphasis is on how lithe they are, how slim, and try to make him bulkier. It pays into his power set as not needing to be just fast, to be lean, in that if you're stealing kinetic energy, you don't necessarily have to have the physique of a runner to be fast. If you're stealing it from other people, you're not generating it from within. Therefore, I'm not handcuffed by making him look like he runs really fast. He doesn't have to run fast. Again, he can steal that kinetic energy and put it to any use. The other thing that Frank and Arris gave me that was greatly appreciated was the name Gold Rush. So we have the gold circles over his suit that when he runs fast, they kind of come like streaks. And really, that when you have those kind of motifs on the suit, then you don't really need to like lean into the gold any more than that. So let's just keep it plain, keep it black and white, so that if he is out and about running on the streets, all you really are going to see is like these golden streaks, these golden lines running about. And I thought that was a pretty interesting representation of his power.
As far as an example of how fast or powerful Gold Rush is, well, during the Cataclysm, him and Crossout were working together because she was basically taking over civilians' minds and helping them get to safety, being like, here, go this way, I'm controlling you. And him being super quick was just carrying people to safety. You literally see it in the teaser trailer. He's lifting people, kids and stuff like that, and just being super quick. He's able to get like hundreds, if not thousands of people out in like a matter of seconds. So without him, lots of civilians probably wouldn't be alive.
With Gold Rush, we wanted a character who was one of the greats, who was like really upstanding, like well-respected, and kind of like poster child superhero. Like, for me, I imagine he's the guy who would be on like anti-drug PSAs and things like that. Obviously, Infinite, I think, was a huge one, but Gold Rush, I think, was more of the PR, like kind of like, hey, like, this is clearly someone who's doing great work and someone we could respect. We hint a little at this with a lot of the memorabilia you see that Gold Rush keeps. Early on, we do get to see his house and like kind of his personal little like superhero space. And I think there's a lot of fun stuff for people to look at and think about, like, oh, wow, like, what does it mean that he would have held on to this? Or what does it mean that we see this moment from his past? As a lot of the fun of this book, as I've said, is building out this like rich, robust history of these heroes. And he's definitely a hero we're excited to dive into more as time goes on. Infinite is one of our main characters in Astonishing Times, and when we started creating this book, we knew we needed a really strong, iconic superhero to be the core of our universe and be the core of this title. When we started considering what a kind of like Omega level or Superman adjacent character would be like, Arris and I both had a lot of thoughts about how, one, we can make something that felt unique to our interests in our title, but also provide a little bit of that archetype to the fans. Let them understand like, oh, this is the character who you should all be paying attention to. This is almost the iconic superhero who's going to represent the ideal of the book, a lot of the themes. And because of that, Infinite, obviously, as I said, is a very important character and someone we put a lot of thought into. Infinite
is the original superhero for our world. He set the tone for the world that we find in Astonishing Times, and he sets the tone for the book for characters like Noah. Like, this is the superhero that everyone has grown up with or heard stories about. So he's in the DNA of the city. He's in the DNA of the story itself. He's a huge presence, not only to the characters in the book, but his presence is felt right from the front cover, which you'll have seen by now. And I think in the time since the Cataclysm until we enter the world of Astonishing Times with issue 1, Infinite has had to do a lot of self-reflection, and we'll meet him and see where he's at and what conclusions he's come to, but he's already been through the biggest test in his life, and we will get to see, as opposed to putting him through that, we'll get to see the outcome of that or how that has affected him. The evolution of Infinite in Astonishing Times is really interesting, as we began with, again, this archetypal kind of Omega level hero who is almost one of the greatest saviors of mankind. And when we end up meeting him, we see that he's become a little bit more of almost like a businessman, a little bit more of someone who is dealing with the practical problems of the world versus the kind of big, huge, like super heroic issues. And one thing that I love is that you can visually see the difference. When we see Infinite at first and see him in the Cataclysm, he's youthful, he's kind of got a more carefree look, he's got long hair, he's got dreads, and is just kind of really in his element, versus when we see him later, he's very clean cut, he shaved his head, he's got a suit on, and I think that dichotomy is really important to the superhero genre. And while it's not quite a secret identity, it's playing with the idea of two different identities and how you present yourself to the world when you want to confront different things. And that progression and really filling in the blanks for the reader of like, oh, I can understand why he would end up this way, is a big part of the story, and something that we slowly unravel over this first arc of Astonishing Times. It is very much his story, and hopefully something you can relate to and understand, like, oh, what would Superman do if he wanted to be more practical and not just flying around in his underwear?
Infinite and Koken were the two characters I had the most fun with, which again is probably because, you know, organically they became the Batman and Superman of our universe, as you have the human who's really good at fighting and all other things, and you have the most powerful being in the universe potentially. So it was just really, really fun to put our spin on Infinite and see what we could do different, because again, there's so many different versions of Superman, right? You got like Homelander, I guess you could throw Goku in there, a Superman obviously. So is like with all those different versions of that type of character, there was a lot of pressure to be like, okay, so this type of character that's super strong and everyone looks up to and is the leader is out there in multiple versions. What are we gonna do that's gonna draw people in to make it different? And I think we did enough that hopefully people think it's fresh, and his design, I think just the way he looks is really, really cool. I love the dreads. It's almost like what capes do, where it adds that dynamic of like the flow and stuff like that, and it just looks cool. As the Superman archetype, I wanted to really visually push Infinite's physique. This is kind of like, you know, the thing with guys like Superman, you know, these powerhouse characters, and I didn't want to do any different with Infinite. I actually wanted to push it to the point where like I don't want capes or anything distracting from that, so he's literally a guy just in a skin tight suit. That's one aspect of a character, and then there's the personality. He's not the kind of guy who would wear a very cluttered outfit. His costume's simple because, you know, when you're off saving the world all the time, you don't really need to have bells and whistles and ornaments on your outfit. You know, your deeds speak more for you than your costume, so he's happy to keep it simple. In terms of his suit, he shows, he doesn't tell. He's one of my favorite characters. He's definitely the favorite design that I've done. When it comes to Infinite's power set, his power is quite literally in his name. It's infinite. That's the whole point. That's why he's called Infinite, because the way his power works is he draws it from all things living. So all things that's alive, whether it's sentient or not. So any, you know, a plant, an animal, a human, an alien race, he could draw from all of that. So as long as there's life in the universe, he has power. So he's obviously incredibly strong. He could fly. He's incredibly fast. X-ray vision. He has laser vision, or I guess as Superman fans would say, heat vision. But if I had to compare Infinite's power level to Superman's, I gotta say Infinite. I mean, again, it's in the name. His power is infinite. I know Superman flying to the sun, absorb it all, but can he draw all the power of life in the universe at once? I don't think so.
It was much more about with the physicality of his power, like how does he like kind of crackle when he fights? Like what do his eyes do? Like how do we communicate that he has this energy draw ability? And I think there's a lot of elegance in that. Like we'll see when Infinite uses his powers, he has very specific color that he uses. He has very specific kind of little flourishes. And largely, I think it was really important for us to start out thinking about what is the backstory of this character? How is he not just Superman? We really want to give people something that felt of the genre, but had its own twist. And I think with Infinite, we struck a cool balance with his backstory, which we will slowly reveal to you. And it does have some fun kind of twists and turns in it, but also his power set as well. And I think it's one of the fun things to discover as you read about a character. And certainly for me, it's always more interesting to give them emotional or character weaknesses versus like a physical weakness like kryptonite. But again, we considered all options with Infinite, and you'll see how it pays off.
My favorite thing about Infinite as a character is how he's this super powerful being who has done all this good in the world, but he was sent here to eradicate it. But then he found that there's more good in people than bad and chose to fight for it. There's more stuff I'm not saying, but I just love the fact that he was literally built to eradicate Earth and was like, no, these people can be better. They are good. I'm gonna save them, and turned on his people.
The Cataclysm impacted Infinite in a myriad ways. It left him with a lot of questions about himself and his role as a hero, maybe some self-doubts. And so he's taken time away to like question his role, but meanwhile in his absence his legend has grown and grown to the point where he's become this icon. And so when we meet him in this story and he's thrown back into the spotlight, we're going to find out if the man can now live up to this legend.
Infinite is incredibly important to the Astonishing Times story. He's probably the most important piece to the story, as everything literally comes back to him. Whether that's good or bad or not or whatever, it all comes back to Infinite. He's our dude. It's much like Superman in the DC universe. Everything revolves around him at the end of the day. And same thing with Infinite. You have to have that guy in your universe where everyone looks up to, and Infinite is ours. Well, there you have it, friends. A peek behind the curtain at how we came up with Gold Rush and Infinite. We hope you guys dig these two characters and the journey we take them on. Or should I say, the hell we put them through. I guess you're just gonna have to read the series to find out for yourself. And as I mentioned earlier, you can dive into the story and world of these characters right now, like this very moment, because Astonishing Times Issue 1 is available for your reading pleasure exclusively on Comixology and Kindle. You can also read it for freezies if you're a Prime or Kindle Unlimited member. We would be stupid excited if you gave it a read and then let us know what you think. All of you in the Variant Nation are gonna play a huge role in where the story goes after Issue 5. So I hope you'll be a part of it. There will also be more character spotlight episodes to come as the story unfolds and more are introduced. So keep an eye out for those in the next couple of months. Until then, we'll see you next time when we talk about all things comics.